Can Solana reach a new all-time high this cycle? Many traders got their first major win when Solana hit $300. But since then, it fell just below $100. The meme coin craze crashed, and even an entire country used it to scam people out of millions of dollars. Many traders now think the Solana party is over before we've even had a real altcoin bull run. So let's talk about the state of Solana and what it will take for it to reach my price targets from last year's prediction. Let's look at the Solana coin's long-term performance, not only in USD terms, but also among other cryptos. Remember, we really need to see Solana survive against Bitcoin and the rest of the market over its second cycle. So let me show you the charts that can actually track this. From the December 2022 bottom to the top, Solana has seen a 29x growth and briefly surpassing its previous all-time high at $250. The recent top was essentially printed around Trump's inauguration date. Since then, Solana has indeed broken above its uptrend that it has held for the past 2 years and made a new lower low when it dipped below $100. Welcome back to the VirtualBacon channel. My name is Dennis. I'm a crypto angel investor for the past 6 years, and I have invested in over 100 crypto startups. On this channel, I share views on market trends and investing strategy to build wealth in crypto. So now there's a major elephant in the room. Is this just a double top structure that we are seeing play out on the second cycle? And can Solana actually get back above $250? To answer this question, we have to look at the SOL BTC ratio chart. You see, on first glance, the Solana BTC ratio chart is a bit worrying because Solana has not made a new high against its BTC valuation in 2023 to 2024. Although this was a great comeback story where Solana ran from $10 to $250, it was about average performance when it comes to altcoin versus Bitcoin pairs in a typical bull market. The easiest way to visualize this is by using the Fibonacci retracement tool. So we take the previous all-time high made in September 2021 and map it to the bear market low made in December 2022. Then we see Solana has bounced to just touch the 0.618 Fibonacci retracement on the SOL BTC ratio chart. This is very typical behavior that you see on most altcoins on its second cycle. Here is the chart of total 2 minus USDT or stablecoin divided by the market cap of Bitcoin. This measures on average how altcoins are doing against Bitcoin compared to previous cycles. You see the altcoin market overall bounced to right around the 0.618 Fibonacci retracement level in the 2021 bull run versus the 2017 bull run. This is why the Solana performance isn't actually outstanding per se. It was at a great time in the bear market where Solana was one of the first to run. However, it didn't run far enough to the point that it exceeded Bitcoin's performance. And now Solana is also dropping on the SOL BTC ratio chart. There's also similarity between Solana's performance right now and Ethereum's performance in 2021. And this is coming from Benjamin Cowen's analysis in one of his previous videos. Here is the chart of Ethereum versus Bitcoin's ratio. You see, in the last cycle, Ethereum was one of the first to run, and it also peaked at one of the key resistance levels on the Fibonacci retracement, this time at the 0.5. And also, in the early point of the cycle, it made a major dip towards the 0.236 Fibonacci retracement before bouncing back up, but never making a new high on the BTC pair, and eventually kept bleeding against Bitcoin in valuation. We're seeing a very similar pattern play out on the Solana BTC ratio right now. This presents both good news and bad news. The good news is Solana is most likely going to come back up in the second phase of this bull run when global liquidity conditions improve and we have an overall altcoin bull run. Even just this leg up can bring Solana to a new all-time high in dollar value. However, the bad news is that this alone will not make Solana a standout performer against all other altcoins. Because if Solana comes back up to retest one of these fib levels but makes a lower high and then starts to decline against Bitcoin in valuation, that will be a terrible sign because that will essentially mimic Ethereum's performance from 2021 and 2022. So while we can all be very hopeful for Solana to have a second leg up, I think the more important question is whether Solana can come back up and continue to run and make a new high on its Bitcoin pair, or is it going to make a lower high and start to decline? The meme coin implosion really left a sour taste in traders' mouths after the Millennia and the Argentina coin rugged. However, we must not discount the unique position Solana has right now. Even if you hate what meme coins are, you still have to recognize that Solana is the only viable competitor to Ethereum when it comes to smart contracts. Out of all major blockchains today, Solana's virtual machine is the only other blockchain stack that people are still actively developing on and using to trade with every day. No matter how you look at the rankings, whether by DeFi TVL, by average wallet accounts, by number of transactions, by total dApps volume, Solana still ranks among one of the top. The only other stack here is Ethereum's EVM, but currently that stack is being split up by so many other blockchains, all based on Ethereum's core technology. Sure, there are other up-and-coming competitors like Sui and Aptos with their Move VM. However, they are simply uncomparable right now to the adoption of Solana and Ethereum when it comes to wallets, number of users, number of developers, network stability, and the general recognition for its safety. So that begs the question, can Solana actually replace Ethereum to become the king of smart contracts? That's definitely a possibility, and that's why I hold both Ethereum and Solana in my portfolio. However, at the current moment, Solana is still lacking in some areas. While it is the go-to choice for retail traders, mobile apps, and high-frequency trading, Solana is still lagging behind when it comes to institutional interests and RWAs compared to Ethereum. And overall, scalability is no longer the killer feature of blockchain technology. And I'm not convinced that this alone will be able to make the SOL coin, the asset itself, reach its full potential. Think about all the relic layer 1s from past cycles. Neo, EOS, Polkadot, Tezos. So many coins have come and gone and lasted at most 2 cycles, and eventually they all faded into irrelevance and all their gains were given back to Bitcoin. Are we going to dump Solana for the shiny new layer 1 token next year and then repeat it every cycle? This is a scenario that we really don't want Solana to be in. Going forward, the 2 key areas for Solana's success are institutional adoption and long-term resilience against the rest of the market. For Solana to truly become an asset that's worth holding beyond just the blockchain software alone, it needs to reach a similar status to that of Bitcoin and Ethereum. This requires a longer price history where Solana can have stable performance against Bitcoin over at least 2 cycles, and institutional recognition as a digital commodity. On the institutional front, Solana is already making huge progress this year. The CME Group has just launched Solana Futures on March 17th. This is a coveted position on one of the most regulated exchanges in the US. Since 2021, the only 2 futures ETFs launched on the CME are Bitcoin and Ethereum, and now Solana has joined that mix. The only other altcoin competitor with a similar status is XRP, with their futures to be launching on CME in May. We will save the coverage on XRP in another video. The SEC has also withdrawn their previous lawsuit against Solana on whether or not they should be classified as a security. Even if not officially stated, it's clear that Solana will be receiving the regulatory nod as not to be a security in the SEC's eyes. So the natural next step is for there to be spot Solana ETFs to be launching in the US. Now, just last week, the first spot Solana ETF has already launched in North America in Canada. And back in March, Fidelity has also filed for a spot Solana ETF to launch in the US. Fidelity isn't just a firm focused on digital assets. They are the number 3 largest asset manager in the world by AUM, just behind BlackRock and Vanguard. So perhaps this is enough to push it over the line, or maybe even BlackRock will be entering the race last minute. When BlackRock files for a spot ETF, they do get approved. Out of all previous filings, there has only been 1 rejection ever. However, currently their stance is quite unclear, as we have seen in their February interview. When asked about this prospective Solana ETF filing, BlackRock only beat around the bush and said that what is the investment thesis and is the asset suitable for an ETF wrapper? Is there sufficient liquidity? So they were basically considering it, but there are a lot of questions and they don't want to promise anything yet. BlackRock's on-chain Buildo fund has been integrated to trade on the Solana network already. Out of all current filings, we will have until October 10th for the SEC to make their final decision on whether to approve or reject the spot Solana ETF filings. And Bloomberg analysts are giving these an approval rate of 90% chance. So if BlackRock were also to file, they probably will join before the deadline as to not make any other firm launch before them. And last chart I want to show you is the market cap of Solana compared to the total 3 market cap minus stablecoin market cap. This shows me Solana's performance against all other altcoins. You see, even this chart has peaked in November 2024, right around the time when Trump won the election. This is the pivot point in sentiment where people were no longer making huge amounts of money on Solana by trading meme coins. The early excitement that got people into Solana from 2022 to 2023 was because of how low the price of Solana truly was compared to its value. But now that it's fairly valued, being in the top 10 rankings, is it going to survive another cycle? This is the key question. To summarize, the early trade on Solana is largely over. It's no longer a beaten down layer 1. It is now a giant. When looking at other layer 1s that promise high speed and low fees, usually these coins do not last past their second cycle and never make new highs versus Bitcoin. If Solana is going to be the chosen coin to replace Ethereum or at least remain in the top 5 spot, it clearly needs to make a new high on its SOL BTC ratio in order to reach those valuations and break this altcoin curse. This means we cannot only focus on Solana's USD valuation and how it was earliest to run against all other altcoins in the bear market. Instead, we have to pair its performance against Bitcoin's ratio and see if this can make a new high, and pair Solana's valuation against all other altcoins to see if this can get back to a new uptrend. When we have the real altcoin bull run over the next 12 to 18 months, when global liquidity conditions improve and Bitcoin dominance actually start to drop again, Solana will get a second wind and come back up to its previous valuations against Bitcoin. But then, will the SOL BTC ratio stop in this range and go down, or can it actually go back up to reach new highs? With these two scenarios on the SOL BTC chart, we can calculate some price targets for Solana by the end of this cycle. First of all, I'm expecting Bitcoin to hit $200,000 to $250,000 by the end of this cycle. And I'm expecting Solana to reach around the 0.5 Fibonacci retracement level, which is between 0.0022 and 0.0024 on the SOL BTC ratio. So then we can do some napkin math calculations. With the low target of 200K times it by 0.0022, that gives us the low end target of $440 per Solana. And taking 250K times the higher end ratio target of 0.0024 gives us $600 per Solana. Honestly, if this is all you're looking for, I think this is quite likely to happen, where Solana can hit at least $440, and around $600 is all give or take the same range. However, even if Solana reaches $600, it still doesn't put it in the clear on a macro time frame to reach the next level. You see, in order for Solana to outperform Bitcoin convincingly this cycle, it needs to reach at least above 0.0031, which was this peak made in March 2024. I would like to see Solana reach 0.0033 and maintain there on a weekly time frame. This would convincingly print a new higher high and show a uptrend. Using this ratio target, I want to see Solana get above $700 and ideally over $800. This would truly put Solana in its own category of an altcoin that has not only survived, but also outperformed Bitcoin over 2 cycles. This will convince me to hold Solana for more cycles to come over a much longer term. Lastly, how about the time frame? Is Solana's price bottom now? Am I buying now or am I waiting? And when do I expect Solana's top to be in and for it to reach a new high? There are many bullish catalysts coming up for Solana this year, with the ETFs having their deadlines by October and a 90% approval chance, and quantitative tightening to pause sometime this year, where by Q4 time, global liquidity conditions should improve and will have likely reversed to the upside. This will drive up all altcoin performance, including Solana. To see a full deep dive on this, you should check out my previous live stream talking about the Fed trigger and how money printing and the pause of QT can actually trigger an altcoin bull run. These two major catalysts will both come by Q4 this year, and that's why I believe right now is a good time to be getting into Solana. There is still some uncertainty coming into Q3 with with the US debt ceiling expiry and the refuel of the Treasury General account, which will drain some more liquidity out of the system in the short term before the Fed makes a full pivot. So do be careful about that. I'm not saying Solana can immediately shoot up to new highs. We should see some more chop between that $100 to $150 range. So this is all good buying opportunity of a range. Now, in terms of long-term timeline, I am shifting my targets to mid 2026, and I am no longer forcing myself to exit my Solana position this year. This is because I'm expecting a longer cycle overall for Bitcoin and the rest of the market. I have covered this as well on my updated Bitcoin exit strategy video that you can check out right here. TLDR, I am expecting Bitcoin's rally to last until mid 2026, which means the altcoin cycle could last potentially until Q3 of 2026. This is mainly due to liquidity factors and how the Fed just keeps delaying their pivot and wants to drag this on as long as possible. So in summary, I would totally buy Solana right now between that $100 to $150 range. There are major catalysts coming up for Solana in terms of institutional adoption and for altcoin cycle overall in terms of a QT pausing and stealth QE happening this year. I believe Solana will reach a new high around $500 or so over the next year. All it needs to do is to make a bounce back in terms of its valuation against Bitcoin to match its 2024 levels, while Bitcoin pushes to a new high to around 200K. For the long term, however, I really want to see Solana reach above $700 and ideally above $800, because this will put Solana in its own league where it's an altcoin that will have outperformed Bitcoin over its second cycle. And this will convince me to hold Solana for a much longer term. I'm currently holding a large bag of Solana in my public portfolio, taking up 30%, and I have held this for the past 12 months. In fact, I have increased my Solana holdings in March at $128. These are all made publicly in my trading log. I will look to increase my Solana position even more when the Fed pauses QT and global liquidity starts to rise again. To see my day-to-day portfolio actions, make sure to follow me on X at VirtualBacon 0x. This is where I drop all of my quickest updates before I make them into these videos. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.